Good morning. Today is Thursday, August the 15th. My name is Donna Smirniotopoulos, and I am the host of Angry Taxpayer. Today, I want to talk about the issues of transparency and honesty and integrity in the city of Norwalk, and especially among city officials. And I'm going to begin this conversation by talking about Firetree. For those of you who are not familiar, in 2017, the Zoning Board of Appeals heard two separate cases and applications from Firetree Limited. Firetree Limited is a not-for-profit that in this case was eligible to receive about $6 million in the form of a federal contract to operate a residential reentry center for federal prisoners at number 17 Quintard. 17 Quintard is about a quarter mile from where I live. So I became active in advocating on behalf of that neighborhood, and I helped organize neighbors, and we hired an attorney. The Zoning Board of Appeals rejected the applications, but there's a lot of history here, and I'm going to begin kind of at the end, which was in early November the 6th of 2017. Bob Welsh, who is one of the editors of the blog Nancy on Norwalk, was conducting candidate interviews, and he interviewed incumbent Mayor Harry Rilling about Firetree. So Bob Welsh asked, several years ago, Firetree sent a certified letter detailing their plans to you for a federal halfway house on Quintard Avenue. Some have said that by not taking action immediately after receiving that the city missed an opportunity to stop the project before it began. Is that a fair criticism? And here is Mayor Rilling's answer. No, not really. You don't send a letter to the mayor of a community and expect that if you don't hear back from the mayor that it's okay to move forward. And he's correct. There's a process you follow. He's correct about that also. Here's where he gets into the untruths, the deflections, and what is possibly an outright lie. So here is what the mayor said about the letter that he received from Firetree Limited in September of 2014. So this was at least a year before Firetree purchased the home, which was known as Pivot House from Pivot Ministries. And I quote here from the mayor, the letter was very vague. The letter just said they wanted to run a halfway house. Then later on, when I questioned them on it, because a halfway house in that area is not permitted, when I questioned them on it, they said, we're not a halfway house. So I would like to read to you now from the letter that the mayor received on September the 5th, 2014. And this letter was required because the federal government requires applicants, contractors for federal funds, to send these letters out as part of their request for proposals. So here is the letter. Dear Mayor Rilling, the purpose of this letter is to inform you that Firetree Limited has submitted an offer to provide residential reentry services or, quote, halfway house services for federal offenders released to Fairfield County, Connecticut. This action is being taken in response to a request for proposals issued by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The Bureau of Prisons encourages full and open competition in the procurement of these services. Consequently, other offerers may also be responding to this RFP. So the letter goes on in excruciating detail about exactly what Firetree was proposing to do at number 17 Quintard. And the mayor received this letter 3 years before the application process and at least a year before they owned the property. So this is an example of the mayor either dissembling or outright lying about what he knew and when he knew it. Now, there are a lot of reasons this is important. Obviously, it speaks to an integrity problem and an honesty problem with our incumbent mayor. But there's some other interesting details related to the Firetree project. Back then, I created a timeline because the process stretched back to 2013, which is when the Federal Bureau of Prisons submitted their request for proposals. So on February 9th, February 12th, and February 27th, 2014, attorney Liz Suchy of Carmody Torrance made inquiries at P&Z with Aline Rochefort, who is the chief zoning inspector of the city of Norwalk, on behalf of an unnamed client regarding 17 Quintard Avenue. And she asked, assuming the same use, can my client obtain a zoning permit to operate? And Ms. Rochefort replied to her that if the use was the same and there were no open violations, a new zoning permit could be issued, okay? So this is all happening in February and March of 2014. This is before the mayor has received his letter. And at this point, P&Z and Aline Rochefort do not know the identity of the applicant. But Liz Suchy, a well-known attorney in Norwalk, is representing this client. So Liz Suchy knows that the client is Firetree. On April the 3rd, so just less than 2 months after Liz Suchy begins this inquiry, there was a property transfer, number 38 Quintard, which belonged jointly to Edwin Camacho and Judy Farnsworth, also known as Dee Dee Farnsworth. Mr. Camacho surrendered his share of the equity in 38 Quintard entirely to his then wife. They subsequently divorced. So the argument behind this is that they were in the midst of a divorce, that this was a personal family issue. At the time, Ed Camacho was the chair of the Democratic Town Committee. People in my neighborhood wondered why Mr. Camacho was not more of a presence advocating on behalf of the neighborhood during the Firetree hearings. I was alerted to this quitclaim on the property after the hearings concluded, and I found it an oddity. And I think it is inconsistent with any understanding of possibility and truth in these circles that Mr. Camacho did not know anything about what was afoot at 17 Quintard. It could be the most bizarre coincidence to ever happen in the city of Norwalk. It's possible that Ed Camacho knew nothing, that he never speaks to Liz Suchy, that he had no idea what was going on. I don't find that plausible. And we had a previous discussion about integrity issues in the city, and the city is simply, the Board of Ethics is not interested in pursuing conflict of interest as an issue. Mr. Camacho is chair of the party. He's also was appointed by the mayor to serve on the Board of Estimate and Taxation, and he is now chair of that board. He was in solo practice, hired by Ventura Law in August of 2017, and the city retained Ventura Law and chose Ventura over two non-conflicted law firms to represent the city in an opioid lawsuit, and the Board of Ethics chose not to investigate. They simply dropped it, even though there was compelling evidence that Corporation Counsel Mario Coppola steered the committee of three, which included Michael Corsello and Richard Bonifant, that he steered them in the direction of Ventura. And in fact, Mr. Bonifant says that he was never consulted on that final decision. So clearly the city has an ethics problem. We have a transparency problem. We have an honesty problem. And the honesty problem begins at the top. There's an old Italian saying, fish stinks from the head. I have been consistently dissatisfied with the mayor's responses and rationale for doing nothing about Firetree. I agree with him that it was incumbent upon the applicant to make sure that all their ducks were in a row. However, Firetree has attempted to come into other municipalities where local leadership has made an attempt to circumvent the actions or to lead them in a different direction. And in this case, I think there are plenty of other places in the city where a residential reentry center under the Federal Bureau of Prisons housing federal prisoners would have been more appropriate than a B residence zone. And one of the most compelling reasons for saying no to Firetree is that they were going to be 50% over capacity for what was allowed for the neighborhood. So this is just the beginning of a series. I'm going to be continuing to talk about freedom of information, ethics, and the kind of performance that we should be expecting and we are entitled to for our tax dollars, even if we're not paying any property taxes. We're entitled to honesty and integrity from our top elected officials, and in my opinion, we're not getting it. So I hope you enjoyed this broadcast, and hope to see you tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, then maybe on Tuesday. So have a great weekend if I don't see you until Tuesday. Bye-bye.